Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing fantastically well. It's Connor here. We're back with another One Leeds video. We're back with another video where we'd like to initiate a bit of conversation, debate, discussion, topical interest on this channel. I don't want it to just be purely news updates and, trending bits and all this sort of stuff. So I wanted to speak about, we've spoken on the channel a lot about the ecosystem in the Premier League. And before we start, everybody, please do us a favour. Make sure you're liking the video, subscribing, sharing content to your friends, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, Instagram, whatever. We've got additional stuff on the Patreon. We'll have another podcast uploaded today, so make sure you're checking out that one, everybody. Well worth it. £4 a month. You can become part of the YouTube sphere as well, £2 a month. Also, we will have the debrief back tonight, which I'm excited to get going. Me, Gabe and Oscar. We had really good numbers last week. I think we had 1,300 people in the building, live viewers, which was great. Make sure you stick in on for that one. That'll be going from around about 7 p.m. this evening, so I'm excited for that one. We'll be chatting everything Leeds United. But I wanted to speak about the Premier League ecosystem. I wanted to speak about loan players coming back. I wanted to speak about, was it good that Leeds United were relegated from the Premier League? Now, I'm seeing this a lot at the minute. Was it a good thing? Look, we're in a good moment right now. But was it a good thing that Leeds United were relegated from the Premier League? We've gone 13 wins in 14. We are flying. We are the dominant team, in my opinion, in the division. And there's ways to break this apart. I would say no. I think it's always a horrendous thing for a team to get relegated. Sponsorships, revenue, gate receipts, all of this goes down. And I think it does cripple the club. And I think it crippled the club in the summer. And, you looked at a lot of the players that went out. It was a big sort of impact on Leeds United. And you've got to say credit to Hammond, Steinson, Farker, the 49ers, Parag. You've got to say well done to all of these guys behind the scene, really, because they were able to steady a very sort of rocky ship with sort of 10 to 11 outgoings in the summer, which in a normal season is mental, and you don't really recover from that, and you probably finish mid-table and then look to build for the next season. So what they've done is unbelievable. They could even be ahead of time. There was a lot of murmurs at the start of the season about it being a 2-year plan. Probably looking at Leicester, probably looking at Southampton, able to retain a lot of their players that they built up through European competition, through years in the Premier League as well. Money filtered down via those competitions, via Premier League wins and Premier League Championship, and we're able to invest in the squad, and some of those, like Ricardo Pereira, are still around. So Leeds have been competing with that, really, and I think the job they've done is absolutely brilliant. But I think when you look at the overall picture, the big grand pie, Leeds getting relegated is never a good sign. And I think it's because a lot of it is getting back there. And, if we're not to go back this season, if we're not to get back to the promised land, it's another level of player going. It's your Summervilles going. It's your Rutters going. It's probably Ampadu going within 2 seasons because he's too good. He's only 22 years of age. Obviously it's Rodon not signing again. There's a whole complexity that I don't think we fully focus on as fans. And that's why I find it quite difficult to live in the moment, because you can live in the moment, but you kind of have to get it done, being the size of club we are. And I think the size of club has a massive impact as well, because Leeds United get more eyes. I know it sounds ridiculous, but we're on Sky Sports most weeks in comparison to maybe a Burnley or a Luton or whatever last year when they went up. And that, Burnley were playing very, very, very well, but Leeds United are a much bigger club. Leeds are in front of the world media a lot more. They'll be put on the biggest TV stations, even at this level, even in this tier, because Leeds United get more eyes, quite simply, which means more people watch Leeds, more notoriety, more player sort of exposure. And it sounds really basic, but that's true. And that on top of having 30, 40 scouts at every single game when it comes to the best European teams as well is also a massive impact. So I think getting promoted for Leeds this season, I think I'm a little bit more anxious about it than a lot of people. But I think, if you were a Burnley, you were a Norwich, you were a West Brom of years gone by, and you were okay being that yo-yo club, that's absolutely fine. But I don't think a club at the size that Leeds United are can afford to be a yo-yo club. I think we almost have to be a mainstay. I really do. I just think our players, whatever level, especially if we get decent players, will always be so notorious because they are part of such a notorious club. So I think overall there is a time span on this, a real time span on, and I would give Leeds one more year in the Championship. I would, before I would be getting very worried if I'm being brutally honest with you. And I think that's sort of the timescale that I'd be looking at when it comes to Leeds United and getting back to the Premier League. And probably there, maybe a couple of the reasons why I think getting relegated is never a good option. You've got to think, everybody, we were past that first and second season, which in the Premier League are notoriously the hardest, the most tough. You know, you get past that second season, it's almost a phew. It doesn't happen with many sides. So I think that's definitely something to contextualise. But I think you've got to look at right now the gulfing class between the Premier League and the Championship. You look at Luton, who were really, really strong in the Championship last season. You look at Burnley, who were playing some of the best football, the most exciting football. And really, Vincent Kompany was sort of a bit of a trailblazer in what he was doing Championship level. You know, he was very, very sort of wedded to his principles, and it worked for him, you know, like a certain other Argentinian. And they've been quite unique in the Championship, and Vincent Kompany was almost been elevated already as a Premier League manager, and some teams, there was even talk of City coming in for him at some point to replace Pep Guardiola, but that hasn't worked. But I would love to see Leeds United just within that Premier League sphere and getting up there and staying up for 3 years. And I think as a fan base, we've got to realise that's going to happen. We were speaking about it on the podcast the other day across the pond on the Patreon, and we're having a really good conversation about what the expectation is of a Leeds United fan us going up. You want steady improvement, of course you do, year in, year out. But you look at Brighton when they got back to the Premier League and it was 15th, 16th, 15th, 16th. And in our mindset, Brighton were, you know, unbelievable in the Premier League, but really for years they weren't, and they had lots of money ploughed into it. And that's what you have to do with the Premier League right now. And you look at all of the money that's been invested, and some of these clubs in particular, like Bournemouth, have been able to elevate in terms of their stature due to financial means. Even over 4 years, 3 to 4 years, has been outstanding, staggering. So Leeds United have got to keep up with that. And basically what that means is the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League is so vast that when the 49ers go up with Leeds United, if that is to happen, the money that is going to have to be invested is going to be staggering. It really is going to be staggering. You do wonder if Ipswich were to go up right now, would there be any survival whatsoever? You know, would there be any survival whatsoever? Because that team, there's an argument it wasn't ready for the Championship, and the amount they're going to have to do to that team to get it ready for the Premier League will be unbelievable. So I think there'd be an understanding around Portman Road that there's a 99% chance that they would go down, but Leeds United have a little bit more of a Premier League squad as the Leicester and a Southampton, so that buffer would help us a little bit more, I think, but we would all still need 6 or 7 Premier League investments there. And as well, everybody, you've got to think that if we were to stay in the Premier League last season, we'd have had the likes of maybe Sheffield United and Burnley to compete with. We've gone down to the Championship and been involved in the hardest Championship race of all time, and that is so typical Leeds, isn't it? But the financial situation would have been much better. I feel selling on players would have been much easier. You know, your likes of Aaronson, your likes of Mark Rocker, almost immediately. These loan things wouldn't have even been apparent, really. Maybe 1 or 2, but certainly not the vast exodus that we saw when it came to loans and all this sort of stuff. So Leeds would have been in a much stronger position. So that's something to take into consideration straight away. I think what we've seen with Daniel Farke's side, just from a sentiment thing, it's been really nice to see the build-up of this side as well, because I don't think you could have built up a side like we've built in the Premier League. It's just so much more ruthless. Like, I don't think a Glenn Kamara would have come in and just slotted in the Premier League. You know, this is a guy who, you know, was doing okay at Rangers, but was also struggling to get in the side at Rangers. Coming from the SPL to the Championship is a much smoother transition than going from the SPL to the Premier League. And I'm not just picking on Glenn there, but if we were to bring in an Ethan Ampadu into the Premier League in central midfield, how would that have worked? You know, a guy who's got 3 relegations on his CV consecutively, really. So how would that have worked? And listen, this is just a regular chat between us, obviously, but we wouldn't have been able to probably give the likes of Matteo Joseph. Would you have been able to blood Archie Gray in like they have done in the Premier League, or would it have just been a baptism of fire that didn't work? There's so many questions that do come back to the point of which I don't think it's ever good to be relegated, to be honest with you, but it kind of has helped, and it will always help with sort of developing youth players, you know, in the second tier before they get to the top tier, and there's more mistakes in the locker. You know, we saw when we got to the Premier League and the first couple of seasons, Melee was a young goalkeeper, but the mistakes that he made, would he have made those mistakes in the Championship? This season would tell you that it's a much better bedding in period for a goalkeeper, a younger goalkeeper, than it would be in the Premier League, and that's probably a good comparison. But I do think the logic of what I'm seeing at the minute is, I sort of get it from that standpoint of the youth being able to develop. But the Premier League, objectively speaking, is the creme de la creme. You know, you're staying there for a season. The money that Leeds United would get from even just staying in the Premier League is literally staggering. And we all know that it's the richest competition in the world. And Leeds staying in there would have been a massive financial windfall for them, obviously. So I don't think relegated help us on any financial front, really. The stadium's going to be interesting as well, because Leeds United now have to make a decision whether or not they're going to go fourth with the stadium in the first, second, third year. When do you go about that? Because that will impact the transfer budget. Of course it will. You know, Fulham notoriously impacted their transfer budget a little bit as well, and they stalled. I am enjoying winning. I'm absolutely loving it at the minute, and I am trying to live in the present. But I think the Premier League is round the corner, and that golden goose is there to be had. And I do not want this club staying in the Premier League for year after year after year after year. Some may call it superstition, but it's just logic. You know, you were going to get less parachute payments, you're going to have less effective players, and you are going to have less attraction as a club. And we do have that superstition of being down there after we mucked up the playoffs against Watford in 05-06 when I was there. You know, we had a very, very good team then. We mucked it up and we stayed in there for years and years and years and years. The positive that Leeds United have now is we have a stable ownership and we have a stable manager who's proven to be a decent manager as well. If we are to get to the Premier League, me and many others, we've got to come to the realisation that we can't panic. We cannot panic. There is going to be a likelihood that Leeds win 2 games in 12, 3 games in 12. That is going to be an obvious one. We might play a Crystal Palace and lose 5-1 again. We might play a Bournemouth and lose 4-0 away. That probably will happen. The objective for Leeds United, if they do get promoted, is going to be to stay in the division, is going to be to finish 17th, 2-3 years on the bounce. That is going to be the obvious objective. Now, for a club the size of Leeds United, who you could probably compare to an Aston Villa, the objectives are going to be much higher and much more lucrative. But at this moment in time, where the club is at, I don't think it was a good thing for Leeds United to be relegated, but there is a positive in terms of how it has harnessed some of our players who have now built up confidence. You look at Jorginho, Rutter, you look at Chris Summerville as you know, standard players really when you come into that conversation. I think Rutter's been the big one because I think Summerville did prove it a little bit in the Premier League, as did Willian Onso. I think Rutter's been the big one, to be honest with you, but there is still going to have to be a mass investment if we are to get to the Premier League. 100 million minimum really in this squad you're probably looking at, dependent on how they are sort of going around it. But you know, if we are to have a quick look at the squad, you know, Joe Rodon was obviously struggling at Tottenham Hotspurs, didn't have many Premier League offers. Glenn Kamara was struggling to get in at Rangers. You know, Ethan Ampadu, as we mentioned, has 3 relegations on his CV, which never naturally looks good. Daniel James was struggling in a Fulham side. You know, there is, you can go through the entire side really and look at how some of these players have struggled previously, and they are going to be going back to the Premier League more likely than not. So we can't rewrite history. We can't just think that these players, and this isn't to be negative by the way, but we can't just think these players are the best players on planet Earth now when we go to the Premier League. We've got to be realistic. We've got to be ruthless. And it's going to be an interesting period for Leeds United, but it's definitely exciting. I'm buzzing for it, and I'm loving being a Leeds fan at the minute. But what's your view on the Premier League ecosystem? Brendan Aaronson is probably the one out of the loan signings, in my opinion, who there is a potential for him to come back and slot into this side. I don't think Wober's going to come back. I think he's going to get signed off. I don't think Rocker's going to come back. Llorente, Christensen, I don't think they're going to be playing for Leeds in the Premier League. Jack Harrison, I think he's made it abundantly clear that he really doesn't want to come back unless Leeds are in the Premier League, but he's not good enough anyway, in my opinion. And he's doing the same things at Everton as he did at Leeds United. But Brendan Aaronson's the one for me. Brendan Aaronson is the one who it would not surprise me, just because of his price tag, probably because Leeds want to make a profit on him, and they might think to themselves, look, if you can play for us for a season in the Premier League, whether it be on the bench or not, whatever, coming on, he might impact it and we might get some value back for him. But what do you guys think on that, Brendan Aaronson? I want your thoughts on the loan ecosystem as well, everybody. But it's so fascinating. Do you think it was a good thing that Leeds United got relegated from the Premier League, or do you think it's nonsensical even talking about it? Guys, make sure you like, comment and subscribe. Head on over to the Patreon for some more extensive chat about maybe the Premier League ecosystem or what's going on with Leeds United right now. Link in the description below. We're going to be bringing merchandise to you so It's going to be so close, everybody. I'm buzzing right now. We've got loads of designs coming. You've seen a few bits and bats, and we've got another thing coming around the corner, which I'm really excited for. I'm going to be at the Millwall game at the weekend. Can't wait to see a lot of you guys again. And yeah, if you want to become a YouTube member, do so. I'll see you on the debrief tonight, everybody. Cheers.